Hi. Everyone knows what a trailblazer Selma was. First and foremost, she was a creator. Cooking, sewing, knitting, spinning, weaving, dyeing with natural ingredients, orchid growing, hunting in the wild, orchids of course, gardening, landscape designing, writing, natural food enthusiast. Selma provided so much inspiration as a radical lesbian feminist. She was an icon, but she was also my mom. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. I heard that writing to someone who has died can help deal with that loss. So that's what I did, and I'm going to share that letter with you now, along with a few asides to all of you. Mom, every day I think about you. Partly it's just the shock of realizing that you're no longer here. And partly because I want to share something with you. Luckily, I have a lot of experience communicating with you in my head. When I went to college, it was expensive to talk long distance and even more expensive to travel back and forth between New Orleans and Connecticut. Because of that, we didn't have regular communication. Instead, we wrote long, rambling letters to each other. At least there was rambling on my end. But more than the letters, I had conversations with you in my head. I felt I knew you so well, I could predict and anticipate your reaction to pretty much anything. And I still feel that connection today, as I'm sure many of you do too. I stayed in New Orleans during the summer breaks and took classes, so I rarely got back to Connecticut for a visit, but when I finished school in the summer, I figured it was the perfect time to come home, unannounced. I remember my brother Carrie doing this when he went to school in Boston, and when he would come home to Connecticut, everything stopped because the prodigal son had come home. I thought, wow, that's what I want. I really wanted to surprise you, so I arranged for a visit without letting you know, all during that long flight, and the train ride to Bridgeport, and then a cab to the restaurant. I just kept thinking how awesome this was going to be. I walk into Blood Group. I've got this, my luggage obviously, huge grin on my face. And I see you at the front desk, and our eyes lock. And you look at me, you're looking at me, that look? That look when you think, you might recognize somebody when you're not quite sure how. And finally, you said, have you been to Blood Group before? And of course I said, you don't recognize me? And of course, as soon as I spoke, she knew it was me, and we started crying. All the women in the restaurant, that were working in the kitchen, by the way, they knew it was me. So if you ever felt slighted, that Selma didn't remember you right away, now you know. Now you know it was nothing personal. After years of us communicating primarily through letters, I decided enough was enough. And when I came to visit, I told you I wanted to have a standing weekly talk on the phone. And of course, that is when our relationship really transformed from parent-child to a true adult friendship. So I'm so glad that we did that. But I have to admit, it was also fun rereading those letters I had from you when I went to school. And luckily, Carol Ann found all these letters that I had sent back to her that I got to read recently. There are two quotes from those letters that you sent to me that I want to share with you. Here's the first. I hope I let you and encourage you to find your own capacities and directions, but also for you to judge, discard, or accept. And most of all, I wanted you to be courageous enough to be different and to value differences in others, since I deeply believe the world and most commonly held values are totally fucked up. You did, Mom, you really did. Because of you, I believed I could do anything that I wanted to do. Now here's the second quote. That second quote is truly incredible because so few people are brave enough in their lives to live those lives without compromise. Really committing to what they believe to be true and just. I said this on my Facebook page post to you. She was the rarest of people, someone who lived her life authentically without compromise. Smart as hell, repeating pattern without any gaps, and usually tessellations are made by using geometric shapes, since they all have to fit together neatly. And you know, mermaids are not geometric shapes. It took you a really long time to figure it out, but figure it out you did. By the way, if you haven't noticed, one of the mermaid quilts that Selma made hangs on the back wall at Pluggers, and be sure to look at it the next time that you go visit and see how the mermaids all fit together. It's quite incredible. I remember you starting to explore different kinds of cooking when the Time Life Foods of the World cookbooks came out in the late 60s and 70s. You jumped in wholeheartedly, learning all about these new foods from all over the world, and then holding dinner parties to show off the exotic new dishes. Does any of this sound familiar to anybody here in the audience? And how would you know when you got the recipe just right? Well, practice, of course. Remember when you decided to come up with the best dumpling recipe? So you made so many dumplings that we ate them for a week? I fondly remember the times when you created these magical birthday parties for me as a little girl. Once you sewed hand puppets for everyone who came to the party, and each one looked like the little girl who received it as the party favor. Incredible. Another time, whatever appliques we chose to put on it, and then of course, after we had our aprons, well, then we had to cook what we were going to eat. I mean, who does this? Well, you did. I remember when you first started what eventually became Pludgery. Wednesday night dinners at our house in Westport. I would stand at the door and sell tickets for the food, making quips about how you only fed me bread and water for my labor, but that the bread was so good it was worth it. I remember our family trip to Mexico. This was probably the first major trip that you organized, and then drove across the country, immersing ourselves in the local culture. There were no tourists in the place that we visited. You wanted authenticity. You wanted to really experience what it was like in those towns and jungles. Of course, you repeated that dogged research over and over again on the many exotic trips that you went on after that, often hunting wild orchids, and always, always learning about the local food and plants and handcrafts in those countries. I remember gathering up some of the neighborhood kids and going wild mushroom hunting with you, because the kids could see the mushrooms better than the adults. Then learning how to make spore prints off of the mushrooms as a part of the way to identify them. Also stopping by the side of the road to pick wild blackberries. I mean, life with you was an adventure. I heard a line repeated from a Gene Hackman movie recently after his death. I thought it was so appropriate for when someone close passes. Death ends a life, but it does not end a relationship which struggles on in the survivor's mind. Mom, my relationship with you will never end, but it doesn't struggle on in my mind. It's something I am sure about and grateful for. Wait, there's more. One more thing. Since Selma's passing, so many people have expressed such heartfelt comments. I think this really speaks to how Selma touched people's lives in a way that very few people do, with such authenticity, passion, and dedication to what she believed in. I want you to know her greatest joy was to meet and become friends with the many people who came to Bloodroot and the women that she worked with. She absolutely loved it. She talked about it every single week with me, how important that was to her. And even though she is gone, she still lives with us. She lives in our hearts and our minds because she made a difference to all of us. A good life indeed. Thank you.